Okay, today's lab is going to revolve around gummy bears and osmosis. The objective of this lab will be to learn what happens to gummy bears when we leave them in 5 different types of solutions for a period of 12, 24, 36, and 48 hours. Now, before we move on, we need to understand about 2 different terms, meaning hypotonic and hypertonic, okay? Hypotonic has to do with having a lower osmotic pressure than a particular fluid, thinking of something that's a little on the lower than normal end, or if we're talking about hypertonic, means that it's going to have a higher osmotic pressure than a particular fluid. Think of something that's a little higher than normal. Okay, and here's my printed version of my supplies. I need 1 liquid measuring cup, I need a tablespoon or a teaspoon, and I'll explain why in a moment. I'm going to need 5 identical containers. Let's get that cursor out of the way. Then I'm going to need not 4, but I'm going to need 5 gummy bears, any brand, salt, vinegar, baking soda, white sugar, and water at room temperature. Okay, so here I have my 5 containers. They all have the exact same amount of water in them, and they've been sitting at room temp here in the counter for about 30 minutes or so. They weren't very cold, so they're definitely, room temperature, lightly warm. All right, I have my 2 different measuring spoons, the tablespoon or teaspoon. And remember that measurement amounts, you need the 15 milliliter or the 5 milliliter. I have my cup of water. This is what I use for measuring my water at. Okay. My other supplies, I have the white vinegar, I have the baking soda, I have the salt, and I have the sugar. And we couldn't help it. We kind of got into some of the gummy bears a little bit early, but you could use any brand, all right? Let's get back over here and talk about what we're going to be doing. All right, and thanks to the Michigan Department of Health and Human Services. We're going to use what they've got set up here and go ahead and run this experiment and see if we come out with basically the same thing. All right, so when we've talked about cells, or for 12s and 11s, you'll be learning about cells soon at the 13s class. Cell is what is going to surround, right? The cell membrane is what surrounds that cell. And in this case, we're talking about a semi-permeable membrane, which means it's going to allow things to pass in and out. When we use the term equilibrium, looking at the root of the word, it's equal, right? So what's happening is when we have equilibrium established, that means things are equal on both sides. But when we're talking about hyper or hypo, there's an unequal ratio taking place here. It's higher on one end and lower on the other. So essentially, this is again what we're looking at when we have something in an equal state versus an unequal state, all right? So let's go ahead and start with our experiment. So this is going to be this is the container I'm going to use. I could start off with 1 cup as what's listed on the website, but I don't have 5 equal containers. So I'm going to use these smaller ones, which meant I had to reduce the ratio of these items that I'm going to be putting in there. So because this is it's about 1/3 of a cup, I'm going to put 1/3 of my mixture in. So here I'm going to be putting in this one, 1/3. I'm going to be using a 1/3 of the mixture, or a teaspoon, 5 milliliters of the baking soda, and we'll give that a stir in a moment. Okay, so in this one, blooper time. Okay, so in this container, I'm going to put in my 15 milliliters or 1 teaspoon of salt. Okay, and I'm going to line up these containers here so I can keep straight with what I put where. So there's my baking soda container. There is my salt container. Okay, and in this container, we are going to put our 1 teaspoon or 5 milliliters of sugar. Okay, now on to the last one, the vinegar. Okay, and for the vinegar, Again, I'm going to put in my 5 milliliters or 1 teaspoon of vinegar in this container. All right, now my controlled container is just straight up water. So that way we can see if there's any kind of a noticeable difference between what happens with the water compared to vinegar, compared to the sugar water, compared to the salt water, compared to the baking soda water. And just be on the safe side, I am going to go ahead and use the same color for each one of these. So here goes the one gummy bear in the water. I have the other gummy bear in the vinegar. This one goes in the sugar. This guy goes in the salt. The last one goes in the baking soda. All right, so we are going to be coming back and checking what happens here. We've got 6:54 in the evening. We're going to come back and check it in 12 hours, so that's 6:54 a.m. All right, see you guys real soon.